This is the April 12th, 2022 regular meeting of the Chatham County Savannah Metropolitan Planning Commission. The board consists of Mr. Joseph Welch, Chairman, Ms. Karen Jarrett, Vice Chairman, Mr. Travis Coles, Secretary, Dr. Malik Watkins, Treasurer. The board members are Ms. Lorraine Bowles, Ms. Elizabeth Epstein, Mr. Joseph Irvine, Mr. Wayne Noah, Mr. Jeff Morticia, Mr. Cedric Coleman, Mr. Dwayne Stevens, Mr. Tom Wildwoody, Mr. Lee Smith, and Mr. Jay Miller. The MPC Executive Director is Melanie Wilson.
This meeting will come to order. Today is April 12th, regular meeting of the Chatham County Savannah Metropolitan Planning Commission. I'll ask everybody to please stand for invocation, which will be given by Mr. Commissioner Joseph Irvin, and after that, the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear God, our Creator, we thank you for this opportunity to come together again. Father, we ask for your blessings as we go forward in today's meeting, that our decisions be governed with justice, wisdom, and mercy. We ask, Lord, that you look down on those who have less and are less fortunate than us. We ask a special prayer for those in the Ukraine who are suffering. We ask that you stretch forth your mighty hand and move in a miraculous way. This we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. I want to thank everybody for being here. It's nice to see a crowd. And thank all commissioners for being in attendance today. It's very important that we all get to know one another, meet one another, and do the good for the city and county of Savannah, Georgia. For the staff, petitioners, and members of the public who are participating, our procedures will be as follows. The agenda is broken down into several parts. First, notices, proclamations, and acknowledgements. Next, the consent agenda, which consists of items for which the applicant is in agreement with the staff recommendation, and there are no known objections. This will be followed by regular business, old business, and adjournment. For each agenda item on regular business, the staff will make the presentation. The staff presentation will be followed by a presentation by the petitioner, should they elect to do so. The petitioner will be allotted a time frame of no more than 20 minutes. The board may then ask questions of the petitioner or staff for clarification. Afterwards, the floor will be open for public comment. If you wish to comment on the item that the board is considering and you're at home on your computer today, at that time, use the raise your hand feature on your screen. Do not use the feature until the item you want to comment on is being considered. At the appropriate time, you'll be recognized and staff will unmute your microphone. At the end of your allotted time, as determined by the chair, your microphone will be muted and the chair will recognize the next speaker. The total public comment time will be equivalent to the petitioner's presentation time. Therefore, it is important that you use the raise your hand feature on the computer for those of you at home. Okay. During the hearing on the item, and if you want to speak on the petition, once the floor is closed for public comment on a petition, no additional public speakers will be allowed. If you are not certain you want to speak, still use the raise your hand feature and you will have the option to decline when your name is called. After public comment, the petitioner will have the opportunity for rebuttal, and then additional needed questions by the board will come forward, and finally the board will take action. For those of you who are in the audience who are here on an item and you would like to speak, make sure you get a blue card at the door, and this lady here has them, and she'd be happy to bring you one. And thank you for being here. Okay? Now we'll get started. Notices, proclamations. First, approval of the agenda. I need a motion.
Cole's motion to approve the agenda.
Noah second.
We'll do a verbal vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Okay. Notices, proclamations, acknowledgements.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, two things. One, I've received a note that the applicant for item number 14 wishes to continue it to the next MPC meeting, which will be in May. That is the item for a special use, 2805 Bull Street.
Item 13.
It's item 14, at least. Is it
On mine
13
is
now?
13.
Sorry, it got renumbered. Sorry.
You might have my glasses.
I might need to borrow your glasses then.
No, you don't want to borrow mine, I promise you.
The special use permit, as I said, for
Thank you.
2805 Bull Street. And then the other, I just wanted to take a moment to let you know that we went in with Lauren Bowles and put in a request to the design assistance team with AIA to help Carver Village come up with a master plan. And the city graciously agreed to provide us with the match, and the community's going to come up with the other portion of it, the
Right.
match. And they've already done a site visit. So we just got notified that we've been selected to have that work done. They'll be back in town in July. And we will work with them as well as some of the city staff to in the community to put together a master plan, which they definitely need in order to preserve Carver Village and some of the surrounding areas that kind of as they intersect with the Canal District. So I just wanted to let you know that
Thank
we
you.
were very successful at doing that, and thank Commissioner Bowles for her leadership and assistance with that project.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Melder. So we'll go to notices, proclamations, and acknowledgements. May 3rd, 2022 will be the next regular MPC meeting at 1:30. April 12th, today we had a finance committee meeting that took place at 11 o'clock. Next, we'll go to the items requested to be removed from the final agenda. We have item 4, rezoning request 5659 Ogeechee Road. Item 5 is rezoning request 241 Broadwater Lane. Item 6, rezoning map amendment 500 John Carter Road. And number 7, rezoning map amendment 2180 East Victory Drive. And I need a motion. Oh, yeah, we need to add item 13. Thank you. 2805 Bull Street. Special use request for a bar.
Cole's make a motion to remove items 4 through 7 and 13 from the final agenda.
Noah second.
Take a verbal vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Thank you. We'll go to items requested to be withdrawn. Item 8, rezoning map amendment 0 and 6703 John and Mercer Boulevard. That's rezoning 2 parcels. Need a motion?
So moved, Cole's.
Noah second.
Verbal vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Thank you. Now we go to our consent agenda. Approval of the March 22nd, 2022 briefing regular minutes meeting. Need a, yeah, no, you do separately.
Move to approve the minutes for the March 22nd meeting. Cole's.
Noah second.
Verbal vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? And item 10, authorize executive director to execute contract with consultant for core MPO regional freight transportation plan update. Need a motion?
Cole's moved.
Noah second.
Verbal vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? There's no old business today. Now we go straight to regular business. Item 11, special use approval request, 2110 West Gwinnett Street.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Right. So this is a special use request. Let me pop open these quickly. So this special use request was submitted to us in December last year. Was originally going to come to you at the MPC. In January, the applicant decided to withdraw that or postpone it rather, and continue it till now while they attempted to work with the community on a couple of issues that they had. So this property is located on West Gwinnett Street here. This is 516 right to the west here. If you were to follow West Gwinnett Street over to the east, you would see Carver Village right here. And then if you continue all the way through Carver Village, that would put you at the new arena. So this property is currently zoned IL for light industrial. The special use permit, however, is required for a recycling facility, which is what the applicant is proposing. So these surrounding areas, you can pull up here, this whole area, everything you see here is zoned IL for industrial. So it is bounded on all four sides by industrial uses and properties. To the north is actually heavy industrial here. And of course, there is a railroad, which is the main reason that they're looking at this property for this kind of use. To the southeast here, it's hard to see it because of this thing, but you can see that there is in the corner here is RSF 5 zoning, that is Carver Village. So there was a public notice, of course, back in March when we were actually originally going to run this, or sorry, back in January. We put out another one a few weeks ago to remind the community about it. The applicant has been to 3 community meetings, and I can let them speak to how those went. But we also have received some letters I would like to tell you about. I don't know if we need to go through them all, but the main ones, we got one this morning written out here, but we also have received what is effectively a petition. These are all the same copies of the same letter here. There are 96 of them signed by 96 individual members of the community in that area in opposition to this special use.
Hey.
So to go over the area there. So as I said, this whole area is industrially zoned. There has been a pattern of industrial development around it in this whole area, which continues into this area here, as I said. The future land use map also designates this parcel to be used for industrial use in the future. So as I said before, the reason that the applicant is seeking to use this specific property is because of its proximity to the railroad here. That is a major component of their business operation. So they intend to have trucks come in only from I-516 here. So trucks will never enter the Carver Village neighborhood, and we've actually made that a specific condition of approval for this, is that the trucks must come in off the interstate here, go into the property here, drop off whatever they need, and then exit again here and head out the same way on 516. So the residents of Carver Village should not even see the trucks from their homes effectively. Let's see, let me pull up the map and pictures. Here we go. So as I said, here's Carver Village here. The distance from the edge of this property to the closest home is about 625 feet. It's also worth noting that there is already a different recycling center right here and then another industrial use right here. So Carver Village is actually 2 industrially used properties away from this subject property at the moment. Let's see. And yeah, of course, here's the zoning, like I mentioned, pretty much industrial all around it. So this is just a view of some of the areas so this is the home on the corner of Carver Village that I mentioned. That's about 600 feet from the subject property at its closest point. I'm just kind of circling around here showing that this is the recycling facility to the east that I talked about that's already present. It is kind of, it's visible from everyone's front and backyards. There's industrial uses that you can kind of see from people's houses all around this neighborhood. This is not going to be one of those things, just considering the distance and where we would be. There, as I said, I don't know if I'm maybe stressing too much, but yeah, there's already a lot of heavy industrial use going on here. People are living like right up alongside it here with effectively no buffer. So it is sort of a bad situation on that side. However, that brings me to the reason that we're looking at the special use permit is because it is a way to control the growth of the industrial developments in this neighborhood and put a little bit of restrictions on it that will help the community and be as non-disruptive as possible. So other uses allowed by right on this property would be things like a nightclub, a mulching facility, a freight yard, correctional facility. So all of those things are something somebody could go do without ever coming before this board, and there wouldn't be any special restrictions placed on them. However, because this recycling facility requires a special use, it allows the board here, as well as our staff and the community, to ask for specific restrictions to be put on it to, again, be as non-disruptive as possible. The concept plan and the narrative presented by the applicant appear to describe a use that is as non-disruptive as possible to this neighborhood. So I would like to go ahead and jump to the conditions that we're suggesting to put on it if you choose to vote in favor. The hours of operation shall be limited to 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. An architecturally designed solid fence or wall not less than 8 feet in height shall be required along the southern property boundary. Commercial vehicle traffic entering the facility shall travel eastbound along Gwinnett Street and shall exit westbound only, basically saying that trucks have to come in off the interstate and back onto the interstate. They will not enter the Carver Village neighborhood. And that the special use permit shall be non-transferable. If the applicant chooses to sell this property to someone else who wishes to continue a recycling facility on the property, they will have to come back here before you and get another special use. The applicant also sent in a letter, which you have there, with a list of their operations details. We have not made some of those into specific conditions yet, but you are free to add any of those as zoning conditions to this letter. So with that, I will take any questions for staff.
Before we go to questions of staff, my procedure, I always ask the petitioner to come
Sir.
up if you wish. That way we can ask both of you.
All right.
And you have, state your name for the record, sir, or sirs, and you have 20 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. Madison Elliott here.
This folder, there's the 2 videos.
This is my attorney, Jim Gerard.
Yes, sir.
I'm Jim Gerard. We've been I'm from Oliver, Maine. I represent the petitioner in this case, Southern Metals Properties, who is the owner at the present time of the property. We've been trying to develop this property since late last year. We've had several meetings with Bernetta Lanier, Kevin Adams, who is the commissioner for the district, as well as Marcus Lotson concerning the site plan that we're going to use for the property. We have attended 2 or 3 neighborhood meetings, and we talked to a number of people, and a lot of the feedback that I got was the fact that there was just a lot of confusion about what we were going to put on the property and what we could put on the property. A lot of the residents thought that this was a rezoning and that we were rezoning the property to industrial use. They didn't realize that the property is already zoned industrial and can be used for the uses that staff had just listed out to y'all without any type of restrictions or any special permit we requested. The other rumor that we had was this was going to be a recycling center similar to the one which is next door, which is Sunoco, and similar to the one, I guess, on Old Louisville Road. It is not. These materials that are going to be brought into this property are already going to be processed. They're just going to be processed in a more fine way so that they can then be loaded on a railroad track and shipped out. It's not going to be a bunch of junk cars or metal that's going to be piled on top of this property. It's going to be like an assembly line. The piece of property in question is about 8 acres, 10 acres. It spans about 2,000 feet on the road. There's going to be a lot of common areas within each particular segment of that parcel. There's going to be an office. There's going to be a training session, a training center. There's going to be an equipment storage place. There's going to be a processing area. There's going to be a training area, and then there's going to be a loading area. There are common areas, there are retention ponds within the property. It's a self-contained unit. It's not an intensively used industrial use like the TIC property next door or the Sunoco property next door. This is spread out. And in addition to that, we're proposing a 16-foot fence around the property on Gwinnett Street. I think that the MPC staff suggested a 14-foot. We've said we'd do 16 feet. We also put in our summary that we would do a 40-foot landscape buffer within the fence. We have videos that I'm going to have Madison show you that indicate that anybody driving along Gwinnett Street with that fence that high would not be able to tell what is going on in that property. The other issues that have come up, of course, are environmental issues. And I believe the lady that wrote the letter this morning was worried about the wood fire on Old Louisville Road Recycling Center. We're not handling wood. There was also concern about odors. There will not be any odors. There was a concern about smoke. There won't be any smoke. There will be steam, but not smoke. We're doing an environmental assessment that shows all of this. And bottom line is we are setting a bar for our performance. If we don't make it, you can shut us down. But if we do make it, it should be more than compatible with the properties surrounding us and Carver Village. The other issue that came up is that this is an outside developer who doesn't care about the community. That couldn't be farther from the truth, because Madison is a local developer. He's been raised in Savannah for a long time. He wants to employ the people in the community to work at his property. He thinks he stated there will be 45 jobs of salaries of totaling about over $2 million. He wants to give back to the community. He wants the community to be safe and secure because it will help his business. We've offered to work with the community, the neighborhood association, and help them as far as stopping the crime in the area. We sponsored a rally 3 weeks ago, a rally against violence at EOA. We talked to the head of the NAACP there, and as well as the director of the Equal Opportunity Protection or Employment Agency there. And they both agreed that in order to clean up that area, it is going to take a joint partnership between business and the community. We have assets that we can offer to the community, in which we partly have. We're willing to give them jobs, we're willing to give them monetary support, and also consulting help on their board. But we want to make that area a nice place to not only live, but to work. And I think that's an important element in this development plan. And we've offered through Ms. Lanier and Mr. Adams to enter into some type of binding or non-binding, some type of community partnership agreement where this is all outlined. So we want the community to succeed. We don't want it to deteriorate. And we believe that based on these protections that we're setting for ourselves, that we will satisfy, together with the economic incentives that the community has to have us there, that it's a win-win situation. And I'll have Madison show exactly what he's proposing for the property.
Hello, I'm not a professional at public speaking, so forgive me. Nor am I a computer expert, Jim. That one right there. There we go. So this is the view as you're traveling west on Gwinnett towards 516. That's on the right-hand side of the road. This would display the privacy fencing that you would prevent you from seeing inside the operation. One more short video that sort of gives you a bird's eye view of the operation with inside the walls. All right, so this is looking from 516 towards eastern direction. This shows the railroad service coming into the property from the western side, training facilities, break rooms, an office building, and then you start to get into the actual processing equipment here on the right-hand side of the railroad track. Again, as you moved eastward. And you saw a couple of detention ponds on the property for the purpose of retaining any storm runoff that's accumulated so it wouldn't leave the property. And various pieces of equipment that we utilize in our industry, and then finally a repair facility for the equipment that we utilize every day. So this facility will generate at a minimum of 42 jobs with an annual payroll of $2.9 million. I can substantiate those payroll figures through my current business, which employs over 100 people at those exact pay rates. And that's so that's where I got that information. I didn't arbitrarily just make that up.
Pictures.
The purpose of this proposed use for us is that this process is a state-of-the-art process. It's a very expensive process to put in, but it allows us to efficiently refine the materials to a more marketable and more profitable state in a more efficient manner. And the proposed facility has a tremendous amount of concrete infrastructure, so there will not be dust on the property. I can't fix it. Rob, can you show me how to go to the next picture?
That was the last one. So.
Okay, yeah. So I can open this up for questions, Jim, or I can continue to offer just generally what we do.
I think one of the issues also is the railroad, that a lot of the residents thought that the railroad which was going to pick up these materials, were going to continue east into their community. I believe that there's another railroad track that does go through their community and does cause a lot of noise. But the railroad that is going to be picking up his company's materials are going to pick them up and then they go back to the west. So they are not going to go further east through Carver Village, just like the trucks which are mainly owned by him. So that's why he has control over where they go, are going to be coming off of the highway into this gated. By the way, it's going to be gated. There's going to be a security gate in front. They're going to come in and then go out and go back west to the neighborhood. So he does have control over the truck traffic. And as I said before, if something happens to where there's trucks or railroad cars going into Carver Village, let us know. And if we don't do anything about it, pull the permit. But as I said, y'all are setting the rules for us, and we're agreeing to play by them in order to make this a doable project. And he has gone from coast to coast trying to find the top of the line recycling center site plan to make it that way. And he's trying to invest in this property so that everybody will win by being there.
The property is serviced by the G&W Railroad on the western end of the property. So when they push the cars into the yard and then pull them out of the yard, they will pull them out on the western end of the property. They might store them in the yard that you could see if that video is still up. Is it still there? Cars might be stored right there, if you can see that on the screen, in this yard here.
Point with the mouse on it.
Okay. But those cars would never go past the end of this property. That's not, that track is not serviced on that end of the property.
Is that it?
That's,
I'm open it for questions for the commissioners. And then please state your name for the record, commissioners, when you ask your question. Yes, sir.
I'm Dwayne Stevens. You mentioned processing versus fine processing. Could you please define what the fine processing looks like and what that entails?
so this facility is not open to the public. Okay. So it will not, there will not be people in pickup trucks dragging whatever they've cleaned out of their backyard into the facility. What will happen here is that my trucks from my other facilities, of which currently we have 4, will pick up processed material. Okay, so scrap that has already been compacted, flattened, and baled and densified. Okay. It will arrive in this facility where it will be unloaded, and then it will be run through this machinery to liberate it from insulation, glass, non-recyclable materials, basically, and then yield a marketable product.
Okay. And the liberation process, that's what I'm trying to get an understanding of. What does that entail, that separation to get it to the material that you are trying to then send out?
Okay, so
what does that look like?
the materials, let's say, for example, you would have a bale of what we call white goods in our industry, which would be like refrigerators and stoves. And then those materials run through a hammer mill process where they are essentially shattered. And then they go through the various refining processes after that.
Okay. And I guess my line of questioning is based on the idea of the environmental concerns. So, understanding the process a lot better to know what it takes to actually accomplish what it is that you're doing. I think that would help better understand and land in the space of the potential environmental impacts.
Okay, so when you process these materials in this machinery right here, they come to the facility in a depolluted form. So they've already had fuels and oils removed, as well as if you have an air conditioning, you would have the gases removed as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Jay
Mr.
Melder.
Melder.
A couple of comments and a few questions. Just for the benefit of my colleagues, because I think this will have some significant discussion at my council, I'll be abstaining today to remain somewhat impartial before I have to make a recommendation before my board. With that said, I'll say that I do believe that this special use permit is in line with the current comp plan, and I believe that this facility would offer less intrusion than others allowed by right, and probably be a better neighbor than others in the neighborhood. With that said, there are some conditions that the petitioner offered in their letter, in a letter to MPC, that were not included in staff recommendation, and I would urge the board to consider these as conditions if it moves forward. Specifically that the truck traffic be limited to 25 trucks a day, that the facility and all recycling activities shall be completely shielded with a 40-foot wide landscape buffer and a 16-foot high fence, that all noise generating activities associated with the facility shall be restricted to the rear portion of the property away from West Gwinnett Street, that the facility shall be secured during off hours by security gates at all exits and entrances, and that any litter, dust, or other emissions generated by the recycling center shall be controlled by the strict application of all federal, state, and local environmental statutes, ordinance, rules, and regulations, and through the implementation by Southern Metals Properties of written in-house rules of operation as well, and to include those in the conditions if this moves forward.
The only objection I have to that is 25 per day is too limiting, but I would say something in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 would be acceptable.
Was that not in the letter from Oliver Manor on that?
changed subsequently?
That was when we were in the January window of trying to make some decisions, but I don't think it's a significant difference.
Double.
Well, the model, we have a business model that's built on a certain amount of tonnage. And that would limit the amount of tonnage through the facility. So it would make it, not profitable. Then we couldn't go through with it.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Jarrett?
So I wanted to address the environmental as well. There's no pollutants, and what is the steam used for?
The steam is not, it's more of a climate issue. There'll be some days where you will see no steam, and there'll be some days when you do see steam. It depends on the humidity in the air, because during the process, heat is generated from friction of materials running through the hammer mill process. So if it happens to be cold and damp outside, you will probably see steam,
All right.
not smoke.
And nothing is going to be left from the equipment that's brought in? No Freon from the refrigerators?
All the
No
Freon
oil
is
from
removed prior to
cars.
coming into the facility. Any vehicles that are flattened that would come into the facility would already be depolluted, in the sense that they would have no oil and no gasoline in them.
Okay. I wanted to ask staff a question as well. Oh, I also wanted to ask about the environmental assessment. You said that you were doing an environmental assessment to show that there were no hazards?
Phase 1 environmental has been conducted on the property, so there's no current environmental issues on the property as it exists today.
Okay, it's already been completed.
Right, but as far as, further in future ongoing environmental assessments, we obviously plan to run the machinery in an environmentally friendly manner. Okay, so there are controls in place to keep it such.
Okay. I wanted to ask a question about land use. What is future land use for this property? I also wanted to find out why it is a special permit as opposed to a by right.
Well, the future land use map does designate this parcel as industrial.
Industrial.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, well, I think, did it make a distinction there? Yeah, light industrial, I believe, yeah. As for the second question about why it requires a special use permit, it's outlined that way in the ordinance. I don't know if Marcus has a further insight into that.
One of the things that were done, Marcus Lotson, one of the things that were done during the NUZO process is that we identified uses that were within areas or within zoning districts that in some cases throughout the city were adjacent to residential properties. We know that in this particular neighborhood and in others, in West Savannah, for example, there are a number of industrial uses that are in close proximity to residential. So we thought that the special use process would allow the commission and the city council to have the opportunity to create conditions in those cases. So that's the reason why the special use process was established for this.
But the special use wouldn't be required for other industrial uses.
There are some industrial uses that are allowed by right, yes, and non-industrial uses that are more intense.
But a nightclub would not be required to get a special use permit.
That's correct.
Okay. There's another question, but I'm sorry, slipped my mind.
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Melder?
Jay Melder, I am concerned about the truck traffic. I think we can look at near port communities and say that truck traffic is just going to be a given there, but it's a big impact on the community. And a little thrown by the curveball today. I think certainly from my standpoint, where we were planning on 25 trucks a day and trying to mitigate that, but now learning from you that to meet your business model would need to be double, if not more, to meet the model. And would like to learn more about the kind of truck traffic you're going to need to see and how we can mitigate that if this moves forward at all. But I'll tell you that this will likely be a very key issue as this petition moves forward.
Sure. I mean, I'd be glad to discuss that further with you. As far as the entrance and the exit on this particular parcel lend themselves nicely to getting on Gwinnett Street and off Gwinnett Street extremely quickly. So
I think what he's saying is that the traffic is not going to be going to Carver Village. It comes in and then it's restricted to go back out to 516, which is right next door. So the truck traffic is only going to be between where it comes off the highway into the entrance of the facility, which is right next door to the intersection.
that's right there. So
If you move the cursor around, they'll see it.
the proposed entrance is right about here where the mouse is. The proposed exit is right about here where the mouse is. And the trucks would then loop out on Gwinnett going back towards 516. So they never penetrate Carver Village or further down the Gwinnett Street corridor towards the arena at all.
And how would you enforce that?
Probably about 95% of the trucks entering the facility would be, I own the trucks. We currently use about 5 to 8 subcontract trucks per day. They are under our instructions. So essentially we would train them that this is the entrance, this is the exit, and this is the way that you go. And for no other reason would you go any further down Gwinnett or come in from the other side of the arena for any reason. There's no reason to with the proximity to 516 right there. It's very easy to keep these trucks very close to that exit and entrance there.
Mr. Chairman, Joe Urban.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at the historic nature of Carver Village and knowing what that community has been through in the past. I'm concerned. I'm very concerned, not only because of your trucks going there, but other trucks in the neighborhood as well that take that same route. And when you went from 25 to 60, you stopped my thought process at that point. I'm going to be blunt. The other thing I'm concerned about is item number 4, noise generating activities. What's the decibel level of noise? There's a lot of noise in that neighborhood anyway, generated from I-16 that makes it almost unbearable to those who live in certain parts of Carver Village.
Well, so the OSHA requires that the decibel levels be acceptable to a certain level so that it does not damage one's hearing. We have done decibel studies at our current facilities in the past, and they do not exceed that which is dangerous to any sort of hearing impairment for one, or at the distances that the neighborhood is away from the machinery, the decibels created by the machinery would not exceed anything that's acceptable under state law.
One of the things also I should point out is right next door to this property to the west is TIC, which is a good generator of noise right now.
Yes.
And we wouldn't hold a candle to how much noise they generate. As I said, any type of noise generating equipment will be in the rear of the property, and well within the confines of the regulations that apply.
And one reason when I initially, the whole reason I wanted to go to Carver Village in the first place was to put our best foot forward when we offered to spend a fortune on a very, very tall privacy fence, which it's not just a privacy fence. There are other things that can be applied to that fencing to deaden any kind of noise that goes on behind it. So it will not only shield any view of what's going on as far as the processing of materials, but it will also deaden the sound. So I think it would be very,
Yes.
Just want to make a clarification quickly. The reason that we recommended an 8-foot minimum fence is because that is the tallest that's allowed by right. If they did want to move with a 14 or even 16-foot fence, at the site plan process, they would have to apply for a special exception from the city engineering department.
Okay. Thank you. Duly noted. Mr. Coleman was next.
Yes, Cedric Coleman. You speak to separation of materials for the recycling. What happens to the materials that aren't acceptable for recycle, where do they go? Do they leave by rail car or are they trucked back out of the site?
No, so the materials can all be shipped out by rail or export container, but in this case, it would be all shipped out by rail.
And I have one other question. Well, not a question, but more of a statement relative to the development of the site. And I want, after being on this board for, so many years, we need to also consider that we have a petitioner who is willing to work with the community, and with the by right opportunities that are on the site, please try and take advantage of the opportunity to have someone who will work with the community and take advantage of that in whatever form or fashion is possible, because someone else can come in there and you would never get any opportunity to talk with them. And the truck traffic could be some generation where you'd never get the opportunity to talk about. So I would like us to, sort of consider what's going on. The truck traffic number is a big change, double that number, but let's also consider the ramifications of alternatives on the site if we let this opportunity to have the community really be a partner in this slip away from us. So that's it.
Thank you so much for saying that, Shedrick. That's a very important part of why we're here. We would like to have a good relationship with the community.
Mr. Noah?
Yes, sir. One of my concerns is the noise that we say is or is not going to be generated, but trucks with Jake brakes and the wall concerns me. That needs to be 16 foot high, but it says a 40-foot wide landscape buffer, and the video showed a tree every so many feet. But I think it needs to be a heavily vegetative buffer to break the noise that will be resounding off that wall and push back into a neighborhood. So I would encourage changing a landscape buffer. I think landscape could be simply grass, something more dense to help with the noise level.
Yeah, we are more than willing to make the investment to make this, desirable to the community.
Mr. Chairman, I also like to point out that the comment said that the 40-foot buffer is within the fence. So the drawing, this video doesn't show the vegetation that's within the fence. So that's where the buffer is. It's within the fence. So, well, those are the trees that are along the road. There's two different things going on here. There's trees along the road, and there's that 40-foot buffer that they specify will be inside the fence. That needs to be trees. There's a lot of vegetation on the site right now that probably could be left within that 40-foot buffer untouched, but that's where it shows.
The video was also, if I could note this, just like an architectural rendering, not obviously completely to scale as an engineering drawing would be.
Chairman, could we have staff pull back up that drawing up? I thought I remembered seeing the vegetative buffer on the road side of the fence, and I may stand corrected. No, not, there was another drawing you had.
Yeah.
No.
Are you talking about the video that we watched?
That was not it. There. Okay, I'm sorry. Is there one before this, or is that the first one?
That looks like it. This one here does show 40-foot street yard buffer.
Thank you for the clarity.
I'd like to also clarify another thing that if we look back on the map here, actually this one's probably better. The closest home to where one of the access points would be measures about 1,000 feet. So if the trucks did keep to that schedule of not coming in this way and only coming around from 516, because of the perspective and curve of the road, I don't believe that there would be any chance you would see one of these trucks from any of the homes, to my understanding, but just want to make that note.
Ms. Jarrett?
I wanted to come back to the neighborhood. How is the neighborhood feeling about this at this point in time?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking.
We,
I'm asking staff more than you.
Chester,
Let's get staff.
I believe that we've had 2 neighborhood meetings and the feeling was negative toward it because I think they were misinformed as far as what we were actually doing. They were just basically against, and the mayor even showed up at one of the at the meetings, and but they just don't want industrial uses on that property because they feel that they're just going to cause their properties to deteriorate and depreciate, and a lot of them
From staff,
didn't quite
please.
understand that.
Let me hear from staff, please.
Yes, ma'am. We have, over the last few months, received, phone calls and letters, and of course, the letters I showed you today, pretty much all of them in opposition to this project. There have been staff, myself and Marcus attended the first neighborhood meeting that was, I believe, back in January. Is that right? Might have been early February, around there. And there were about 100 people in attendance at that. The feelings were largely negative there as well.
Okay.
Thank
They
you.
weren't included in the packet.
We have some of the, we have like the letters here. We just got this stuff this morning though, so.
Dr. Watkins?
Red one, the other side. There
Okay,
you go.
all right, thank you. Malik Watkins. I guess when you mention the community being misinformed, I guess based upon the information we've been provided, based on this discussion, we've also been misinformed because the information we were provided said 25 trucks, now we're up to 60. Also, the information you provided talks about the community being proud of this facility, but I don't know anybody in here that would be proud of living next to a, I guess on your document, a 16-foot high fence. And so if there's an issue in terms of communication, and we're just saying that the community is misinformed, and you've had 2 community meetings, and you're saying that their negativity is based upon misinformation, but you're the one there providing the information.
No,
It appears that there might be just some miscommunication to us as well, based upon my comments and my colleagues as well.
the miscommunication is that the property is zoned industrial. Industry is going on the property. This was the opportunity to restrict the industry and work with the industry. That's the miscommunication we are referring to, not to any specific numbers or processes going on the project.
Yes, sir.
I
Chairman,
just want to speak to the fence again.
State your name.
Oh, Dwayne Stevens. I'm going to speak to the fence again, though I understand the intent of the fence when it is detailed in the staff review for an architectural fence, that flat panel fence that is in the rendering, and I understand that is not the final design. However, I think that would be imperative to get that right, because if you have a flat panel fence, not only do you have a massive wall that's going to create some sound reverberation, you also have a blank canvas for any type of graffiti or anything that could potentially make that area even, well, less desirable. I won't say even less desirable, because it's a community that is a well-established community and people love it near and dear. But you don't want to deteriorate any of the further conditions.
I would even propose a sort of dirt berm with vegetation on it on the roadside of the actual fence to prevent that. Don't have any problem with that either.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir,
Jay
Mr. Melder.
I agree with that comment as well, and the dirt berm. I'll just again state that I think there is a lot of value in the special use permit process. I think that the use here, the uses by right could be much, much worse and more intrusive and intensive. However, I think there still needs to be some discussion about the particulars in this, specifically to the truck traffic. What types of trucks are you talking about? You know, we're already seeing significant impact of trucks along Gwinnett Street because of other industrial neighbors in the site as well that park on Gwinnett Street and line up. And what we plan for is not always what's practiced on these sites, and it becomes a big impact to the community. There's a lot of discussion about the arena on the other side. Me personally, I'm not worried about the impact on the arena or the impact on the interchange court facility, which is a city facility. I'm concerned about the impact to Carver Village and the other neighborhoods. So that really needs to be nailed down tight. I think if you're going to be successful with the special use permit, I do think that there are a lot of restrictions and conditions through this process, and agree that you're trying to be a very good neighbor, that we also need to consider about what's the alternative here if this doesn't go forward. But the truck traffic is an issue.
Joe Urban, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to echo what the city manager said and my colleagues, Dr. Watkins and Mr. Stevens. My concern stems strictly, and I'm going to say this is the lesser of two evils, is what we're having to pick between. And my concern is for the residents of Carver Village. By way of saying this, I have a mother that lives in Cloverdale. And I can tell you traffic just from the arena has already backed up that area, period. And I'm familiar with Carver Village intimately. And to me, what I'm hearing and what I would like to see is something far more succinct and accurate and on point. That way, everyone from the neighborhood to the commissioners know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and the way you're going to do it. Going from, I did the 25 trucks, 60 trucks. You're looking at 6 trucks per hour, 5 trucks per hour, just your operation. We haven't even counted the other folks in that area. So let's just say we're doing 10, 12 trucks an hour. And to me, if I had to deal with that, even though you aren't going into the neighborhood, you're still a part of the traffic and you're still a part of the 516 exchange coming off. Here's my concern. If there's an emergency in that neighborhood and they've got to come down 516 exit to get to that neighborhood, that's a problem as it exists now.
Well, no, because we have another facility approximately 2 miles away that we could reroute the trucks to. This is not a problem.
I'm saying if an emergency vehicle has to get to a neighbor in that particular community and you guys are in the middle of operations, that's part of my concern as well. Or a fire truck for that instance having to get down there. I would like to see something a little more succinct. I will say this, the efforts that you have taken to become a good neighbor, I applaud that. I think that we'd have to see, for me, I'd have to see one more step to assure the neighbors. You know, we get down to the road where we have a lot of promises made and finally we don't get those promises come to fruition. And I will say this, particularly in communities of color. And so that's part of my concern in my deliberation, but I applaud you for what you're trying to do. I really do. But we've got to get this truck. I'm very concerned about that.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin.
If I could add something. I want to remind y'all that the MPC is free to make a recommendation, including a condition that the site plan will have to come back to you for approval. That would include stuff like the wall, the access points, things like that, that you could, take a look at the final design of before it actually gets approved, rather than just moving to engineering and having to meet minimum standards. So if that is something that y'all choose to do, once this final site plan is ready on their end, they could bring that back to you and you could look at it and approve it and apply any other conditions to it at that time that you felt necessary.
Thank you.
In
Chair,
addition,
this
if
is
I may,
Lorraine Bowles.
I'm sorry.
I just want to be put in the queue if you don't mind.
Who's speaking, please?
This is Lorraine
Okay.
Bowles. I'm not on the computer, so I can't raise my hand, but just if you would mind, put me in the queue.
That was Lorraine Bowles, who
He's a
is
commissioner.
the commissioner who wanted to be put in the queue to make a comment. I was just going to suggest also, as you're pondering this case, to look at making a recommendation that they do a 4 to 5 foot berm with a 10-foot fence. And the reason is when you start going over 10 feet, you start running into stability of the fence as well as graffiti, but 16-foot fence is really hard to maintain and to keep structurally viable. But a berm does give the applicant and the community the opportunity to do something that's a little bit more decorative, and it will help with the noise because it will absorb the noise better. So that's one of the things too, as you're pondering this, that I would like for you to consider versus just a straight 16-foot fence.
Can I ask you what material fence you had in mind?
Sure. We had a steel fence in mind to begin with. But if I could have one more second to respond to Mr. Irvin, because he brought up a very interesting point a minute ago.
Okay.
So when I'm discussing these trucks and I was talking about a cap on the amount of trucks, in the logistical nightmare that we all live in, it's very hard to predict trucking. So what I was trying to get to is a daily maximum number. I don't know if somebody's going to sit on the road with a counter and click every time one turns in the gate, because there are times when you have sickness or trucks are down, and then so maybe you only do 10 loads on a Tuesday, so you got to do 30 on a Wednesday to get caught back up. That's sort of the reason that I'm objecting to the 25 per day. But if I can use a tonnage figure, okay, and then back into the math in front of y'all, okay, I can give you a very comfortable amount of trucks on average per day, and it would never get anywhere close to 50 or 60 every day. So currently we process around 8,000 tons per month of material. Our loads average between 15 and 16 tons per truckload. So if you take that number and you divide that 8,000 tons by 20 working days per month, and then by an average payload of 16 tons per truck, you come up with a number that's around 26 per day. I just didn't want to lock myself into something that could never exceed X amount, just due to the difficulty in planning things like that. But on average, our number was spot on that we gave you at 25 per day. That's where it came from the mathematics that I just gave you, at an average of 8,000 tons per month.
Mr. Coleman. Chair.
Shedrick Coleman. The discussion on these trucks and the issue of future deals, I would ask maybe the city manager and some others here, that doesn't this start getting to the point where a traffic study needs to be addressed? Because we can't put the burden all on one property owner to address what the future could hold. And a traffic study may be the opportunity to look at what the available land is because of these uses. Again, we talk about how many trucks can be from just any type of warehousing operation will have far more than the trips we're talking about here. So we need to look at what West Gwinnett Street potentially could have there and how that needs to be addressed, and not take this one simple one. So is there a need to defer this a little bit to look at it from that standpoint, from a staff standpoint? I don't know, but it seems like a traffic study is where this is heading, because the petitioner, no one on this dais can sit here and talk about what potentially could happen with the truck traffic. We know it's real, so maybe that we have to get ahead of it and look at it from that standpoint, so we can make a intelligent decision relative to how this property can be impacted to the community overall.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Woodward.
Tom Wywoody. This is more for staff. Can I just ask you a couple of questions about traffic patterns? The truck traffic, does it go down? It goes all the way down Gwinnett, all the way, both ways?
Yeah, so what we're recommending, here's 516 right here, there's West Gwinnett. We're recommending they exit off the ramp right here into the property. They basically come in here, drop off whatever they need to, come out around here, circle back around and go up 516.
So the ingress would be closer to I-6 or 516.
Yes.
And then the exit would be further down.
Yes, sir.
Couldn't you make that a right turn only out of the property? And that would eliminate any truck traffic from this facility going down further into Gwinnett?
That'd be a question for probably.
It's more of a traffic pattern study, but it seems to me that the concern is getting truck traffic down there.
We can make a recommendation that the exit from this property be a right turn only, so that the traffic coming in is coming off of the 516 ramp, and the traffic going out is going down Gwinnett Street toward 516.
Thank you.
So it could be a recommendation. The engineering department would have to make the final decision.
Yes, I'm agreeable. Mr. Hodson.
No, I was just listening to the applicant. They are agreeable to that potential condition. And I could mention that that's simply a site plan issue. The exit from the property can be designed such that there's right turn only from the property.
Ms. Jarrett.
The other concern as far as site plan goes is how many trucks can be accommodated on the site. You know, if you have a day when you have to get a lot of trucks in and you can only get 3 of them on site and you got 2 more waiting.
So in our site plan, we compensated for that because the linear nature of the 2 parcels lends itself extremely well to handling truck traffic as they are long and skinny, just like the property is. So there's more than enough room to provide space for trucks to keep on site rather than piled up out into the street.
Can you go to the site with the cranes, the drawing?
Rob, can you help me get to that?
Which one are you looking for?
Scroll down, I think. Actually, it's in the other. Yeah, these are just the pictures. It's in the other.
The one that y'all had drawn up that had,
This one here?
not that one, not that one, that.
Okay.
So I take it these are the cranes, whether the magnetic ends of the reel that picks up the debris, whether it's metal, what have you,
That's right.
and loads them into the containers right there, correct? And those containers are loaded onto the train.
That's correct.
And you have what, 3, 4 cranes for different, whatever that material is coming on that truck?
I think you would have 4 to 5 cranes. Yes.
Okay. So at any given time, you could have 5 trucks in there at one time for each crane, depending on what that debris is they're bringing in, correct?
I would assume that would probably be about the maximum, because part of our strategy as we route trucks during the day, we have GPS tracking on all our trucks.
Right.
So we actually try to plan throughout the day so that too many trucks don't arrive at the same facility at the same time, because then they can't efficiently be handled anyway.
Right.
So you end up with loss of payroll.
And on top of that, I assume you have this figured out. That's your business, not mine, but the cumulative time that it's going to unload that truck into that container to move it out.
It takes about 15 minutes maximum to unload a truck.
Pretty quick.
That's at a very maximum.
That's quicker than I thought. So rapidly, you'd move pretty good few number of trucks in and out of there in one day.
The facility can, I was, when you were asking about the amount of trucks, as Mr. Melder asked earlier, I was considering that question as a maximum amount. That's the reason I answered the question the way that I did, and I objected to the 25. But on average, it should be 25. The number comes out at like 25.5 if you do the math that I was trying to do earlier.
And staff, would you go pull up the picture of the entry and the exit that's on these drawings here with master plan?
We had a, yeah,
but there's one better than that. It was like from an aerial.
Oh, yeah, we saw that in the video. We can probably scoot back here. Might be in the other video, yes, sir.
Was it there near on?
Right there. Is that going to be the exit?
That's the exit on the eastern end of the
On the
property.
closer to these
Closer
folks'
to the
neighborhood. And can we move that further to the west?
I think there's sufficient room to move it further west. I don't think that it's necessary.
Well, I'm trying to find a way to keep as less truck traffic from these folks. If, I mean, if it can be brought down a little further to the west.
I'm sure with the correct engineering, we could probably, with the
And I
correct
know it
engineering.
interferes with your property, with your cranes. I get the whole visual,
Well,
the turnaround ratio and the whole bit.
Maybe with the correct engineering studies, I can't answer it right off the cuff here,
understand.
but you can engineer a loop within the property and they actually use the same, you just widen what would have been the entrance and make it an entrance and an exit. It's possible.
Or move the exit a little further west. I'm just putting that out there. Just trying to keep as much less truck noise and truck aggravation. That's all I'm looking at. And then, thank you. Any further questions?
This
Any
is Lorraine.
online?
I just want to make sure that if anybody I want to make sure I didn't mislead anybody at all. On average, we were talking about, and if I can get this calculator open right here, can you open this for me? I want to demonstrate my mathematics so that it's accurate. So if you take 8,000 tons
Mhm.
and you divide that by 20 working days in a month, and you divide that by the average payload per truck at 16, it comes out to exactly 25 trucks per day. Now, we're in a commodities-based market. We don't always do 8,000 tons a month. Sometimes we do 4, sometimes we do 8. So that's where my numbers came from. So the number that you had submitted was indeed the number.
Ms. Bowles, are you online? Do you wish to comment or ask a question?
I am. I am. Thank you, Chair. I had a couple of points that I wanted to make for any community similarly situated as this one. I don't know how many letters in total there were submitted. It sounds like all of them were in opposition, but I am concerned that they were not included for the commissioners to see. The second issue, so I don't want to presume that when I hear no might mean no more, in quotes, no more. And so what I hear us discussing is transportation and the impact on the community, noise and the impact on the community. The closest home being less than or about 1,000 feet or so. So when I say similarly situated communities, those who are surrounded by industry or in close proximity to industry, we talk about near port communities, things like that. However, we've discussed the ability to have the trucks enter and exit by 516 without coming through the community. We need to consider the impact on the community who wants to go to work on 516. So even though the trucks may not come through the community, you're limiting access for the community that's there. And again, let's talk about the cumulative impact of transportation, not just this one facility, but all of them. For any community similarly situated, again, whether you meet the noise decibel regulations, let's talk about the cumulative impact. So this industry, and all those that are nearby. And that's what we need to think about. And that's going forward. Any community that's similarly situated, what is the cumulative impact? Let's not talk about what regulations are in place. And let's not, if you just barely meet all of the regulations, but when the cumulative impact is a huge impact on the neighbors. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is there any further questions from commissioners to staff or petitioner before I open it to the public?
I might say just one thing, and that is that if there was a use on that property that didn't need a special use permit, they could probably run as many trucks as they wanted to along West Gwinnett Street.
Well, we probably wouldn't allow it.
Yeah, I know they'd probably have to put some.
I understand, sir. Thank y'all.
Thank you all.
You'll have a chance to come back forward at the end. I'd like to speak again. I'm going to open it up to the public at this time. She's been waiting. Bethany Campbell, please come to the podium, ma'am. State your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bethany Campbell. I am a Carver Village resident, have lived in Carver Village. We first moved out in Carver Village, my family, in 1961. I am almost 65 years old. I will be in a couple of months. There are a number of concerns that we have here. And as for the letters, yes, that 96 package came this morning because this had been taken off of the agenda. I wanted it to be fresher in the minds, but the original letter in opposition to this came to the Metropolitan Planning Commission back in January. I think it was January 10th, when that initial letter was emailed to, I think it was Mr. Lotson's office, I'm not sure. But the community's opposition to this didn't show up this morning. I wanted to make that very, very clear so that the commissioners will understand, because there was an opportunity for everyone to know what the community's concerns were before today. So I wanted to make that clear. Next thing I want to say is, if you want to know how well I cook, it doesn't happen by word of mouth. It happens when you come and sit at my table. and you eat from the plate that I put before you, that I cooked myself. That's to say what? If you want to know what we're living with in Carver Village and how we are impacted, come to Carver Village. I invite you to come and let me give you a tour of what we live with on a daily basis in Carver Village. In a 24-hour span, there is never a period where we don't hear industrial sound. Never a period in a 24-hour span. Trains, trucks, lawnmowers and equipment from the city of Savannah, school buses, all those trucks, because it's the city facility that's open there. Coastal Marine started out as one thing. We don't know what it is now. The smells, the sediment on our vehicles that doesn't come off, inexplicable ailments, respiratory ailments from people who have never put a cigarette in their mouth, who've never put anything in their mouth to smoke. If you want to know what we live with in Carver Village, come to Carver Village. Now, everything, not everything, but a number of things in this proposal seem to be fluid. You know, we were given one set of numbers, and then all of a sudden that number more than doubles. And then there's all of this backtracking to try to fix that, to make that seem like something different has happened. There's detention pond, retention pond. We were never confused in Carver Village. Let me say this, because I heard it said at least twice, that the community was confused about what this facility was for and what it would do and what they would be bringing. We have never been confused. We knew exactly what it was, and we did our research. And we were told at one point, we were never told that whole vehicles, that's something new that I heard this morning. We were never told that whole vehicles would be coming in. We were told that this metal that would be coming in, we asked before if it was going to be crushed up cars. We were told before that it was going to be metal that had already been prepared or ground up or whatever. It was going to come in as pellets or something. I can't remember what it was now, but this whole thing is fluid. And then to say that once we do what we do or get started, if you all find that we're not doing what you told us to do, you can shut it down. You can shut us down. Well, it's a whole lot harder, more difficult to shut it down once it's in operation. And we're going to be impacted. Yes, they're saying that they will be coming off of I-60. People go to work. People come home from work. Traffic is backed up like crazy. And if you look at any of you who know the Carver Village community, one person says he knows it intimately. There's only one direction of Carver Village along Gwinnett Street where you could, well, that's changed too since the arena. We don't know what that's gonna look like by the time it's finished. But all around Carver Village in every direction, I-16 on the south side, Coastal Marine and the recycle place and all of that on the west side, all around us. We had no control over the zoning that took place before this. And that's an issue that we're going to be dealing with. We had no say. We were not given any say about how we would be zoned or how the zoning around that community, because it was a Black community, a community of about 600 houses. With the surrounding immediate communities, probably 1,000 houses. But we've lived there, and that's our home. None of these people who are bringing their business here live anywhere near Carver Village. They live on Wilmington Island, Ferguson Island, wherever else. They told me that themselves when I asked.
Ms. Campbell, your 3 minutes is up.
Okay, so, and maybe somebody else will yield their 3 minutes to me, but these are things that I want you to consider.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We thank you for being here today. Next is Carolyn Slay. Please state your name for the record. Yeah, 3 minutes, ma'am. Thank you.
My name is Carolyn Slay. My family is a longtime resident of Carver Village. My family purchased the home in 1949. And we have been there. And since that time, other members have come in and have lived there. Fortunately, we lived as a family. We knew industrial was around us. We were able to walk where we had to go to work because there was no transportation. But I'm here to tell you that as family moved in, crisis moved in. I lived through the teaching and the side effects of malaria, mosquitoes, all types of industries coming in and doing what they're doing. So I have lived it there. My father died 12 years after we moved there, cancer. My aunt was on Gwinnett Street. She died, cancer. I can go on. But May this year, March the 11th, coming from 516, trying to get to Arena to a meeting. March the 11th, truck held up traffic 25 minutes trying to get into a gate at their next door neighbors where they plan to move in. So these are the things that's going on. Remember, we have buses that parks there. We also have other industrial plants that's in there. I think it's Crown Royal, whatever. They have trucks going out. But do anyone live near a train station, a train tracks? 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning? Yeah, and you're asleep. Now, I don't know if this company has CSX in their back pocket or whatever, but you can't control when train comes on tracks. Okay, you can't. So that's going to interfere with us. There is 80% elderly in our neighborhood. The rest are newcomers and renters. So we have to decide, what are we gonna do in that neighborhood? I'm asking you, I'm applauding you. Oppose this? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Chairman Ellis from Chatham County, Chester Ellis. Nice to have you here today. State your name, sir, for the record.
Good afternoon. Let me make sure the record is clear. My name is Reverend Chester Ellis, and I'm the president of Historic Carver Village Neighborhood Association. Historic Carver Village Neighborhood Association. I remember, now let me say this to you all of you who are on this panel and who are listening. We don't hold you in contempt, nor do we hold you accountable for the sins of your forefathers who served on this panel when we didn't have a say in what was going on in our neighborhood. 1947, 48, when the federal government and the city of Savannah decided to put Carver Village in play, we didn't have a say as to where we were moving. Now we have the opportunity to address you. Let me first say, and I want to say to all of you, yes, you are being misinformed. And yes, you are being glossed over. First of all, by the company itself. The only response as president of the neighborhood association I got from them was in December. I got a packet from the attorney. No calls, no conversation, just a packet from the attorney. Then what they tried to do was they went to our city alderwoman and arranged a meeting with her for our community without even letting the community know. But by happenstance and accident, one of the flyers landed up in my mailbox because one of the residents, they tried to pick and choose who they gave the flyer to. But one of the residents who got it delivered it to my house. And I made everybody else aware because we have that kind of connection. We'll deal with her when the time comes. When we talk to our county commissioner, he is not in favor of this. The neighborhood is not in favor of this. They call a meeting, give out a flyer after 5 o'clock on Friday for Saturday at noon. They didn't realize all of us was coming. And the reason it came because the flyer got in my mailbox. And I distributed by robocall to everyone telling them they need to be there. So they have not been a good neighbor already. Secondly, let me say, we question them as to the retention ponds. We have experience with those kinds of things. The city is right now in the midst of getting caught where we may get caught in. The retention pond, when the runoff goes in there, that's going into groundwater. You're not going to be able to control what goes in the ground. What the city problem is, we remember, those of us who were in Copper Village, and I've been there for 48 years, but I've been associated with Copper Village ever since 1953 with my Uncle Billy's house on Bowden Street. And I used to love to go to my uncle's house because he had indoor toilet and I had to go to the outdoor toilet, where I lived in the middle of the city on 611 Waters Avenue, all right? So what I'm saying to you is there are uncontrollable factors. You put this in place. You give this special permit, and the fact that it needs a special permit said it shouldn't go. If he put a nightclub back there, we couldn't say a thing because it's already zoned for that. We couldn't say a thing, but here he needs a special permit. This is not what the members of the historic Carver Village neighborhood want. You would not bring this down to historic Savannah, downtown. So don't bring it to our historic neighborhood. We're begging with you, don't do that, because this will negatively impact us. We did our own homework about this kinds of stuff. We just got through, and the city manager can tell you, fire blew up and everybody think it's Louisville Road, but it's right in the back of Collette's Quarters, which is part of the historic designation. Took them 7 days, 8 days to put it out. And in the meantime, all the smoke and stuff traveled. The steam coming off of here, you don't know what's gonna be in that steam. What we do know is on the old Tannenbaum property, they used to put the World War II fuel tanks on the Tannenbaum properties. I saw it as a boy. The remnants of the fuel, the jet fuel that was in there, seeped out and seeped into the ground. Now they want to put a parking deck, a parking space over there, and they keep running into contamination. You don't know whether this will contaminate or not. We were promised we were going to get from the company and from the attorney at the meeting. He promised us that they would give us the environmental study. Where is it? You don't have it, we don't have it, and they have not produced it. There is misconceptions about what this thing is and what it can do. The fence will not control the steam. What's in the steam, you don't know, and I don't know. If they're grinding up old cars, there's always the possibility that there is a remnant of fuel in those things. If a fire starts in there, if a fire starts on this property, and it's like the fire that happened in Jasper County, they had to evacuate a 2-mile radius area of that recycle plant. Do you realize how many homes you have to evacuate if a fire starts in this place in Carver Village? 742. I can tell you exactly what you have to do. Where are you going to put those families if a fire starts? And there is nothing, when you have machinery, when you have iron sharpened iron, you're always going to have friction. So nothing can say there's not going to be a fire. You can't predict that. So I'm asking you, since this does need a special permit, that's enough for you to deny putting it in a historic district, one that is a part of the national register of this country. Do your due diligence. It's easy. He's already got property and he's already got it on Tremont Road, right next to the railroad. 7 or 8 different railroads. He can easily get property there and put it there, and he wouldn't even interfere with nobody's neighborhood. This does not need to be in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Ellis. We got a Colin Elgood online.
Am I back on now?
Yes, Mr. Elgood, please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, I'm Colin Elgin, resident here in Savannah. I had a couple of items. One was the operational time that might generate some of the additional noise for that area. The nature to me of separating metals and or crushing metals does sound like the noise may be difficult, but is this a 24-hour operation?
No, sir, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Yeah, I may have missed that. I'm sorry. The other thing, I guess, is any long-term storage of materials that are not going to be recyclable and possibly hazardous. Is that all addressed, that they have a time limit, how long stuff would stay there, or the amount?
We have not been informed of that.
I just wonder. It's just
that. Okay. Yes, sir. Come forward and the petitioners will answer your question, sir.
We have no desire to store materials. We do not get paid for stored materials. We only get paid for shipped materials. The metal recycling business is designed for product to come in, be processed, and be sold. It is not a material that needs to be stored in any fashion at all.
Well, the breakdown I see is the recyclable is the stuff that makes money, but the items that are separated that might not have a value, may take time to accumulate and then store out of there, which I understand will not be to the local sanitation facilities in Savannah.
Okay, so in response to that, the material that's left over is will be shipped out actually for further processing. So we don't intend to actually generate any waste at all. And in the instance of the Louisville Road fire, there was an excessive amount of wood that was not hauled off from that facility. I'm not sure if they could not afford to dispose of it, and that was the reason that they continually piled it up. But that is not anything like what we handle or how our materials even look or appear to be.
And the last question, I'm sorry, I think that this is actually was an additional one. On Gwinnett Street, is an additional lane going to be available, or ramps for a turn lane on Gwinnett? And also, when they exit, is there going to be a ramp for a truck to pick up speed to get into Gwinnett? Or is that a study yet to be done?
I'd have to let the staff.
Probably the
This is Marcus Lotzer with the Development Services staff. The things like access points, decel and acceleration lanes from the property will be determined by the city's traffic engineer, assuming if this is approved, at the time in which the applicant submits a site plan for review. So those issues are part of the development review process. And should it be determined that those kinds of infrastructure improvements are required, then it'll be the applicant's responsibility to complete those improvements.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the voice.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners have a question for the gentleman? Anything? Okay. Is there anybody else online? There's not. Okay. I open it for the petitioner to come forward to state one final statement. You have 5 minutes.
I just want to make something clear as far as the timeline for submitting this petition and also sending it to Pastor Ellis.
Talk in that mic for me. That's just so everybody can hear you, my friend. Thank you.
I had meetings with my client, with Marcus Lotson and Berletta Lanier about 2 or 3 times before the end of last year. The suggestion was made to me to contact Pastor Ellis sometime after Christmas, because Christmas was coming up. I drafted a letter I didn't know exactly where to send it. I looked to see, I went on the internet, of course, and I saw where the neighborhood association's headquarters was. So I actually sent it there. But I did that pursuant to the advice of Ms. Lanier and Mr. Lotson. I followed up that letter a number of times by calling Mr. Ellis's Chatham County number. In fact, I know his secretary, and I left several messages because I wanted to meet with him and talk with him about the petition. I never got a call back. So as far as the notice for the second meeting that we had concerning this petition, this was after the January meeting. We wanted to meet with the neighborhood association again. I got a call from Alderwoman Lanier on Tuesday indicating that she could secure the neighborhood association headquarters that Saturday. She suggested that I draft some flyers and get them distributed as many as I could to the neighborhood. She gave me the name of a person who lives in the, who's familiar with the neighborhood to distribute those. I think I produced probably about 2,000 of them. And I gave the flyers to the gentleman on Thursday morning to deliver and put on as many homes as he could without discriminating between who they were going to. But he knew the confines of the neighborhood. And from what I was told by him, they were delivered. Again, I don't know who they were delivered to, but based on the attendance at the Saturday meeting, somebody must have gotten them, and because we did get a crowd at that time. But I'm saying this because it doesn't have any relevance at all to the merits of the petition, because I feel that in a way that my integrity has been attacked. And I want you to know that I've tried to be as transparent as possible in this process to put everybody on notice concerning what we were doing. And for comments to be made to say that that was not the case, I want to dispute them here. As far as the comments about CSX operating at night, my client has an arrangement with CSX to only operate during business hours. So there won't be any noise being made by railroad cars past 5 o'clock. And you might want to discuss the materials that are being brought into the facility.
So to Jim's point about railroad service, they have like an open gate policy or a closed gate policy. To secure our facilities, we have what's called an open gate arrangement with them, where they only service us when we're open. So in this case, this property is actually served by the G&W Railroad, but I've had the same conversations with them. Furthermore, to Reverend Ellis's fear of fire, we are making a significant investment in this facility, and fire is something that scares all of us, right? So there is a lot of technology on the market now to mitigate fire risk. So we will employ all of those technologies, some of which are 24/7, basically camera systems that utilize thermal seeking technology to scan your property 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to alert you of any potential risk for fire. Also, we train our personnel to look for risk of fire. And with this sort of investment, we fully intend to buy a fire truck and have it on our property, because we don't want to lose a machine that costs $6 or $7 million. So I just wanted to say that. And then to clarify the gentleman that called in and had the question about the waste, when you get done shredding these materials, the leftover material is called shredder residue. It contains about 3% metallics that are still in the material. There's companies that are far superior to our company that have technology that can cost up as $30, $40 million that can then extract the metallics from the waste stream at that point. And they're the ones that end up dealing with the waste, because they want to extract the 3% of metallics that's left into the residue. So that's why we won't have a waste stream. And that's actually a marketable product. And that's all I have. If you have any more questions, let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Open it up for any discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
did the staff have a use table by right for this zoning so that we can see what other businesses could go in?
Let me see if I have one attached. If not, I can certainly pull one up for you.
And excuse me, Chair, while they're looking for that, would you put me in the queue, Lorraine?
ma'am. I'm sorry, you'll be next. Further down too.
I don't think I have it saved here, but I can pull it up from our ordinance if you give me a moment. Okay, so this is being used. So yeah, it's a little bit hard to read how it's formatted, but oh, yeah, pulled up in the county one, sorry. Thanks. Actually, then we can use the Newzo thing, so. Do you want to pull it up? Okay, yeah, regulations by district, yeah. Okay, so yeah, we can, I guess, scroll through this, but so the check mark says right here is permitted by right, and then the S would be special use. Oh, it is. Thank you for noticing that. Distillery, craft, yeah. Terminal. Microbrewery is there, meadery, winery, let's see, commercial dock, warehouses, and yeah, a lot of the IL properties around this area are being used for warehouses currently. So that's kind of been the more dominant use in the larger area around there. But as we pointed out several times, there's the Sunoco and the TIC that are doing more heavy industrial uses next door.
Chairman, clarity on the warehouses, is that open to any size of warehouse? Whatever would accommodate, that lot would accommodate?
As long as it falls within the engineering requirements from the city. Yes, sir.
And there would be no traffic restrictions to a warehouse, am I correct or not?
If it didn't come before you for a special permit, then no, which it wouldn't, so no.
Does this require a traffic study?
This individual site does not meet the threshold to require a traffic study, but it was pointed out earlier that this is sort of a compounding factor onto a lot of other trucks that are in the area. So if the MPC wishes to, put on a condition for a traffic study, that could be something that is done.
Can this be denied until a traffic study?
Ms. Bowles, you had a question?
Yes, and I wanted to add to that. Can this be denied until there is a traffic study?
You don't want to deny.
Continued? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That's what that. Do you want me to go ahead and address what I was going to address earlier, Chair?
I would appreciate that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. There have been testimony about the environmental study. And as we've discussed there, whether there is one or not, we don't have it and neither does the community. Is there an opportunity for us to see that or to get that information?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify about the environmental assessment. That is something that's done at the site plan phase, which is, not where we are right now. The site plan phase would come to the city after we're done typically, but you can of course continue this until you receive an environmental site assessment as well. That's another thing that could be done.
And finally, are there any violations that the company has been cited by either EPA, the county, or the municipality?
I don't believe they have any facilities within Chatham County at the moment, so our office would not be aware of them.
Okay, no, I understand they have a facility about 2 miles away.
Chatham County? Yeah, yes, sir. You have another facility inside Chatham County or? In Savannah, sorry. We in the city of Savannah, but.
Yes, 2820 Tremont Road, we have a facility there. We have a facility in Swainsboro, Georgia, and a facility in Hinesville, Georgia.
Sir, is it a similar facility to this?
No, none of the other facilities that we operate are similar to this in that this is a completely different process. This is to actually take the products from those facilities and refine them further.
Okay. Thank you.
So any violation or citing?
Oh, no, not that we are aware of at this moment, but sorry. Yeah, that would be a question for the.
Could you please ask the question again?
Are there any EPA, county, or municipal sightings for violations of environmental contamination by this company?
No, we have not been cited for environmental contamination ever.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Shedrick Coleman, I want to ask one point of clarification. Are we seeking a yes or no deal here? Is there a potential for continuation before we deliberate further? Does the petitioner expect a yes or no on this action today?
Well, I'm sure he would prefer a yes or no on this action today.
I guess because no is no for a certain amount of time to where it's gone.
Right.
So it's what
Do we want to do
the
a
petitioner want to
continuation?
take relative to this board taking an action today.
Yes, sir, Mr. Lotson.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and I'll clarify the process for the public that's here and that's listening. The special use process requires a recommendation by this body that will be forwarded to the city council for a final decision. So any decision that's made today, well, if it's an up or down vote today, then that up or down vote will be forwarded to the city council for a final decision. The board still does, however, to Mr. Coleman's point, have the authority to continue this item, make some other recommendations for staff to do or for the applicant to do and come back. But if it gets voted up or down today, then that action will be forwarded to the city of Savannah for consideration by the mayor and alderman.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Melder.
This is Jay Melder. I would urge if this board does seek to continue that to do so with the condition that the petitioner reach out to the community and have another meeting prior to coming back to MPC or certainly prior to forwarding to city council.
I agree with you, Mr. Melder, and that's exactly my thoughts.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on just a minute, please. I thank you. My exact sentiments, Mr. Melder, and I feel like y'all need to go back to the table with this community. You can't have so many people, 100%, almost practically in disagreement and unhappy. and try to come to some kind of reconciliation. Maybe it's moving the exit further down. Maybe it's, and our director had a valid point about a 16-foot wall. What if we had a major storm and this wall came down? How about a berm? How about a 10-foot wall with a berm and a decorative berm? And this petitioner has not disagreed at all to make that happen, to beautify the land, to make it safe, to make it quiet, to the best he can make it possible happen. He's agreed to do it. And looking at the property around it, these other facilities, they're horrific looking. And this is actually, it would be very expensive. Look how long that wall would be. But it looks like the man's willing to work with you. And I think there's a lack of communication somewhere along the line. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe y'all need to sit down again. I'm going to strongly recommend that. Come to a firm agreement where everybody's happy and beautify the area. Because I promise you, the other businesses that are already there, that's done. They could care less. And you don't want that to happen to this property. And I know what you're reaching out for, and I agree with you 100%. So that's my recommendation, is to continue with this. Mr. Coleman?
I prefer, I think Mr.
Irwin?
Had me first.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. I'm going to put my lawyer hat on for a hot second. As a board, we do not have the authority to tell a petitioner to meet with the community. But I will say this, I agree with the chairman in essence, in ideology, that there has been a breakdown in communication somewhere in this process. And at some point, whether the petitioner wishes to say it was him or not, I'm of the position of come let us reason together. And if there is a way to make this happen, and if the community can agree to it, that'd be a viable way of doing it. I do not see us, as for me, as it stands now, I would say the best bet would be to continue this matter, to allow the sides to come together, to come back with a specific plan, not generalities, specifically what you're going to do with a burn, or whether there's going to be a burn, whether there's going to be one exit, or whether there'll be two exits, whether there's going to be 25.5 trucks, or whether there's going to be 30 trucks. I think the community needs to know that in order to make an informed decision as to what they want in their community, because as it was so eloquently stated, I no longer live in Carver Village. I no longer live in Cloverdale. And as I say this from the point of my family has roots in Carver Village. I have experienced the trains. I've experienced the smells. I've experienced the noise. I do think this is a good opportunity to break free from the past, but at the same time, I'm cognizant that I'm hearing members of the community voice their opposition to it. In voicing their opposition to it, it tells me that either A, there may be some room, as I'm listening carefully, there may be some room for trust to come back, because it sounds like some trust has been broken. Whether it's an environmental study or otherwise, I think we need to sit down and at least start back at the drawing board. That would be my position, Mr. Chairman. So you and I are similar with that.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Mr. Coleman?
Mr. Shedrick Coleman again. Yes, I was probably leaning in the direction of continuing, but my feeling is, will there be new information presented by continuation? And for me, it's about the traffic and what that impact would be. And nothing has been discussed about how we're going to really quantify the traffic impact beyond the site. And I think that's the crux of the matter. We can deal with where the entries are on this property all day long, but the fact is the neighborhood is encumbered by the traffic in general and what this adds to it. And a solution at that level is what they're seeking. Something's going to happen on the site. This is an opportunity for us to engage in a way that's not the simple site-specific issue. We talk about connections to the community. Well, I have a connection to the Carver Village community as well. I grew up in that area with my grandparents on Nelson Street. They still own property. So believe me, everyone on this board, just by sitting here, you don't know what their connections are and whether they have anything to it. But our job is to listen to all the information that's here and to separate our emotional and personal portions away and to make objective answers and decisions here. So as a professional, I hear traffic being an issue, a concern to the neighborhood, the noises and the other things are cumulative. What can we bring back and continue this project that can get the community on board, or to at least articulate that it can't be solved? You know, one way or another, we need to be able to make a decision if we come back here in another meeting and not rehash the same exact issues once more and be at the same point.
Thank you, sir. Travis?
Just one more point for
State your name.
Travis Coles. One more point for both the petitioner and the community members here that I would recommend if you do have another community meeting is to pull this by right table, so that it's clear that the current zoning is industrial and that the current uses that a petitioner could do without having to get any permissions include a truck stop, which I imagine would have a lot of truck traffic. That's not limited, that's limitless, that we have no control over. So I think that the community has an opportunity here to get as much as you can, basically better the devil you know, that you can work with and try to get, you know, the best fence, the best berm, the best buffer, the least amount of traffic. This is an opportunity to do that, because the next petitioner that comes down the road may put something that's devastating the community there, and something that they could do without asking anyone for permission.
Valid point, Mr. Cole, because, you know, you could very well be looking at containers put on this property, you know?
Mr. Chair,
You know, yeah,
if I can add
be careful.
a little statement to that. I made that comment a little while ago, but I will put this word out. You know, who cares about the dog that can bite you if one's biting you now? Okay, so.
Well, I got an answer for that, but I won't say it. Nah, you know, it's just for the wellness of the people, you know? Anybody else?
Chairman, can we ask the petitioner if he would like to continue this?
Yes. It's better than a no.
We certainly want it continued, but we hope that whatever negotiations come forth are both sides. I mean, I just hope that each side is willing to give and take. That's my only request. But we'd be more than willing to meet and try to work all these issues out.
Do we want to give him a list of issues that we've already spoken about
Marcus, you already.
specifically?
Well, I believe that if the board moves to continue this today, staff can certainly make the petitioner aware of all the issues that were addressed in today's meeting.
Correct.
And those can be the discussion points for any meeting that may happen with the community. The other thing, I'll just let the board know for if you choose to continue this, our next two meetings are May 3rd and May 24th. I doubt anything that could probably get resolved by May 3rd and, you know, turned around in a way that would allow us to evaluate it and bring it back to you. So the next meeting after that is May 24th, and it may be beyond that, but it just kind of depends on the outcome of the meeting and what needs to be done or produced as a result of that meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Karen Jarrett,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to move to continue this project with the caveat that you meet with Marcus and the residents and see if we can resolve some of the issues around traffic and sighting before we meet again on May 24th.
That sounds good to me. I just want to be absolutely.
That's a motion.
Okay.
Cole, second.
Travis Cole,
I'm
second.
sorry. I'm sorry, could we add to that the environmental issues as well as traffic?
That's going to be put in by staff, Ms. Bowles. They're going to list the issues at hand, okay?
No, I was just responding to the motion that included traffic. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Traffic and environmental sounds good to me.
So we'll take a vote. Maureen Bowles, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Coles?
Yes.
Ms. Epstein?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Ms. Jarrett?
Yes.
Mr. Melder?
Yes to continuation.
Mr. Wayne Noah?
Yes.
Mr. Notrika?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes to continuation.
Dr. Watkins? And Tom Wywoody?
Yes.
Joe Welch, yes. Motion passes for continuation. Thank you, gentlemen. I'll see you next month.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just for point of clarification, I want to make sure that you all understand that when talking about a traffic study, that would be looking at all of the uses, and that, of course, would take a little time if we have to
Yes.
engage in that. And that would be something that we would need to work with the City of Savannah's engineering department to undertake, because it needs to be that whole area if that's the path that we decide to move on. So I wanted to make it very clear that the applicant was not initially expected to do a traffic study for an additional 25 or 50 trucks. The issue is cumulative for all of the development that is in that area.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, folks, for being here. And y'all have a happy Easter and a happy Passover. Okay? And be safe going home. Thank you, ma'am. I might come to your house for dinner. It sounded good.
I'm from a family of 10.
I'm from 8. I'm with you. 'Cause I haven't had lunch today and I'm hungry. All right, we're gonna go to item number 12. Amended master plan, Veterans Parkway and Buckhalter Road. Marcus Lotson, take it away, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item on the agenda is an amended master plan that's been requested for a property along Veterans Parkway. It's 4 parcels. It's approximately 212 acres in total. The petitioner is requesting to amend the previously approved plan for this property on the north side of Buckhalter Road and south side of Chatham Parkway. And the property consists of these highlighted rectangular parcels, and actually this one with the lake on it that is not highlighted is also included. The existing master plan, which was approved in 2007, was a Calvary campus master plan that included a series of uses on the property. It included various types of residential use. It included senior care, memory care. It included a school and a church, and some commercial uses as well. This is a exhibit that shows the previously approved plan. And I'm going to walk through just some of this to give you some perspective as to what was done in the previous approval. And this is at a different orientation. So on this map, Buckhalter Road is here. This is Veterans Parkway and Chatham Parkway located here to your right on this map. It's a little larger. There we go. So as I mentioned, a little over 200 acres total for both sides of Veterans Parkway. The property included, as I mentioned, single family homes were proposed to be located in this middle portion of the site around this lake that was designed to include 170 single family detached units on 73 acres at a residential density of approximately 2 acres per unit. Adjacent to the single family here was proposed multifamily. These were going to be condominiums. There were 216 total units approved here on 23 acres at a gross density of 9 units per acre. Below that on this map included an apartment complex that would have been 120 residential apartments on 8.5 acres at 14 units per acre. There was also an assisted living component proposed in this location, 120 assisted living units on 7 acres with a density of 16 units per acre. A nursing home or congregate care component of 120 beds on 7 acres, an Alzheimer's facility located here adjacent to Buckhalter Road. That facility was designed to accommodate 60 beds on 4 acres. There was also a proposed community center that was designed to be for the use of the members of the master planned area, the various residents of the master planned area. That community center, was on 3.5 acres. They did include a outdoor storage area for residents, which presumably could have included storage of things like boats and recreational vehicles. That's on 6 acres of the site. There's also a proposed church on the site. The proposed church was located on 28 acres. This is at the southeast corner of Chatham Parkway and Veterans Parkway. That church was, the church facilities would have accommodated 175,000 square feet of buildings and with a maximum capacity of 1,200 congregants. In addition to that, there was a school proposed at this location. The school was on 12 acres, 12.5 acres, with a total area of 130,000 square feet, and a maximum number of students was 1,500. There was a sports complex located here. This would have been primarily an outdoor recreation area, and that property is on 26 acres. And then there were 14 acres of commercial property proposed and approved here along Chatham Parkway. Now, as I said in the introduction of this item, this plan was approved back in 2007. So in many ways, a lot of things have changed since 2007. A lot of things haven't changed since 2007. The general development plan around this property is largely rural residential. As you know, and was mentioned in the pre-meeting, not far from here is a development, a significant development of warehouse that is currently underway in terms of construction. So that will certainly have make a change to the face of the area. That particular development is in the process of developing access onto Veterans Parkway. So they'll have an on-ramp there essentially to access that property. The access points on this property were proposed to be along Buckhalter Road, here, and here, and then one access point from Chatham Parkway. The proposed access points, which I'm going to get into here in just a second, are very similar to what was proposed back in 2007. Not necessarily the final or the deciding factor in terms of where these will be, but these are what were proposed or would have been proposed by the applicant. This is the revised master plan that's been proposed to be amended. It includes, as I previously mentioned, only residential uses. It includes single family residential, both attached and detached, meaning townhomes and single family detached. It also includes multifamily residential and some recreational amenities. The proposed residential density for the overall site is 6 units per net acre. Primarily, the single family is separated in pods 5, 6, and 7. And then the remaining, the multifamily, and then the primary multifamily is within pods 1, 3, and 4. There are, staff had a number of conversations with county engineering, although this property is in the city of Savannah. Both Buckhalter Road as well as Chatham Parkway are maintained by Chatham County. And one of the principal concerns we brought to them to request feedback on was the access points and the number of trips potentially generated, in particular onto Buckhalter Road. And down from Buckhalter Road is an intersection with Girard Avenue that we believe will have to be studied should this go forward. The access points, as you can see here, are very similar to those proposed in the previous plan. Primary difference being that the previous plan included some fairly traffic intensive, at least, non-residential uses, and particularly the church and school that were proposed. The proposed master plan area includes existing wetlands, ponds, open space, and through the specific development plan review process, stormwater management, open space, and wetlands mitigation will have to be addressed. With the frontage on Buckhalter Road and a portion that abuts Chatham Parkway, one of the issues that came up in particular by county engineering was this access point on Chatham Parkway. That is, if you've exited Veterans on this intersection, it goes downhill as you move to the east down Chatham Parkway. There's a concern about the distance between this proposed access point and the exit ramp on Chatham Parkway, and how traffic can be safely moved in and out of Chatham Parkway. So that's something that, and I'll get into this toward the end, that we'll be looking to have the applicant address. Other issues of concern were currently today, Buckhalter Road is essentially a rural residential road. It will require improvement more than likely based on the number of units that could be developed within this master planned area. So we believe that traffic impact analysis will be required before any development takes place on this property. And just to back up a little bit in terms of the process, under a master plan, whether it be this plan, if it's approved, this amended plan, or the previous plan, prior to any development taking place, the applicant would have to go through the specific development plan review process with MPC and the city of Savannah in this case, as well as address the traffic issues with Chatham County and probably some stormwater issues with Chatham County as well, as I believe they maintain some stormwater infrastructure in this area. The approved plan, the current plan, if it were built out, would have had, we need some strong implications on the existing development pattern in the area, just based on the volume that would be created by the development. The number of residential dwellings and the non-residential uses are very different than what is being proposed now in terms of how the property would operate. The scale of the development would have transformed this area over time, but it obviously never took place. So this property has been vacant since the plan was approved in 2007. The issue at hand, in staff's opinion, is whether this area can support the amount of proposed residential development in a way that would be in keeping with the neighborhood at large and be a benefit to the community. We believe there's a number of components that have to be addressed before any development takes place on the property. Those components will include a flood study, a traffic study, and certainly a yield study to determine the maximum number of dwelling units that may develop here. We also believe that these studies should be completed and implemented prior to any specific development plan approval. In short, we believe that this plan is at minimum as feasible, if not more so than the previous plan that was approved in 2007, based on the fact that it's strictly residential and does not include some of the other commercial and non-residential uses that were proposed under the previous plan. With that, the staff is recommending approval of the master plan amendment. We are recommending that with the following conditions. Condition 1, site plans for the multifamily residential shall be consistent with development standards of the RMF2 zoning district from the Savannah zoning ordinance, and single family residential plans be consistent with the minimum RSF5 zoning district. That a traffic impact study to include intersection control evaluation at Buckhalter and Garrard be done, as well as a flood study and a residential yield be completed prior to any specific development plan approval. Finally, as a condition in regards to Chatham Parkway and Buckhalter Road, we're recommending that Chatham County Department of Engineering determine if improvements will be required, and they also approve any curb cuts to those roads as a condition of the master plan approval. And Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. The applicant is in the hearing room today.
I'd ask the petitioner, thank you very much, Mr. Hodson. I ask the petitioner to please come forward and state your name for the record. And hello, Mr. Yellen.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
And
Thank you.
you got 20 minutes, sir.
Perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, my name is Josh Yellen, here today on behalf of Tribute Companies, which is a family-owned and operated construction, development, and management company. We have Michael Maynard with us, who's a principal of Tribute Companies. He's the project manager for the site. We also have with us Thomas & Hutton Engineering. Jim Collins and John Giordano are here to address some of the engineering concerns that we know were mentioned by Marcus in the staff report. And we do want to thank Marcus for the recommendation and the work that's been done on this site and for the recommendation of approval. And we are in fact in agreement with the conditions that have been imposed. This has been a long process as we've worked through this master plan amendment. We've had numerous meetings with MPC staff. We've had meetings with county engineering. We've had meetings, site plan review meetings ahead of time. We're all trying to figure out a way to make this site work in a way that minimizes impacts, and particularly minimizes impacts from what's shown on this Calvary plan from 2007. For a bit of history, this site was rezoned in 2007 to the PUD M6 designation. And that's a county designation that permits at most 6 units per net acre. We're not proposing to change the density of this site. We are willing to adhere to the 6 units per net acre classification, which as you all know, is a very low density for residential as we get to 2022. I do want to say that when this site was rezoned in 2007, the uses that were proposed across the board that you can see were for 170 single family homes, 220 apartment units, 120 retirement units, 120 assisted living units, 120 units in a nursing home, 60 Alzheimer's beds, a 175 square foot church with seating for 1,200, which is to put in perspective, a Costco sized church, 25 acres of sports complexes, that is larger than the Memorial Stadium facility, a 1,500 student school, which is the size of the current Calvary Day School campus next to Memorial, transposed over here, and then 80,000 square feet of commercial space, which is roughly the size of 12 Oaks Shopping Center. We looked at all those numbers, and I know that the staff report indicates that in 2007, a preliminary traffic impact report was conducted that indicated that this Calvary plan from 2007 would generate 8,200 daily trips. That was based on 2007 standards. We have recalculated the numbers and 2022 standards, and this plan as proposed by Calvary in 2007 would generate 15,036 daily trips if implemented today. We had our traffic engineer look at it, and we actually took the most conservative approach in estimating what would be done on the residential plan that we're proposing. We did not ask her to calculate any of the traffic from multifamily. We maxed out the site from a townhome and single family home perspective, because that would provide you with the highest number of daily trips possible under any scenario. And the number that we're proposing today would be 7,252 daily trips, which is a reduction by more than half of what was approved by this board and by county commission in 2007. It's less trips than even they were anticipating in 2007 when this site was approved. And so we do think that, as a whole, this residential development is better in keeping with the area. We think it is less intrusive. We know that it will have less traffic impacts on the neighborhood and the surrounding areas, but we are understanding and do fully agree with the recommendations from staff that we do conduct a traffic impact study, that we work with county engineering regarding access, that we conduct all of the assessments and reports that will be required so that we can ensure that this site maintains and has proper access for the residential units. And so once again, we're not proposing to change the density. It will still remain PUD M6, 6 units per acre. And I will say that that is a net density and not a gross density, which might get lost in translation sometimes. But we are not allowed to count any of the wetlands, the roadways, any of the undevelopable areas on the site does not count towards the density. So if it were to be maxed out, it's the 1,200 unit figure, but we know that it's going to be less than that because it's based upon a net density standard and not a gross density standard. And so we are happy to answer any questions that you may have. We do thank staff for the recommendation for approval. We are willing and happy to adhere to all the conditions in the staff report. And thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Noah?
I have a question for staff.
State your name for the record, my friend.
Wayne Noah.
Thank you.
One of the last couple meetings, we were dealing with a multifamily off of Chatham Parkway at this intersection on the ramp. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And the biggest concern that I recall was not only access, was the drainage system, the canal system. Will this dump into that same canal system, or is that in a different area?
Oh, that's a good question, Mr. Noah, and I don't know that I can answer that. I think this is probably a little, let's see.
I would think it would all somehow end up in the Forest River.
Well, you're probably right about that. And I'm just looking at this intersection versus where, because the one you're talking about was at the corner of Highway 17. Yes, I know the one you're talking about. I think Jim Collins wants to answer this.
Mr. Collins?
Worked on this, I think.
State your name for the record, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, I'm Jim Collins with Thomas and Hutton. That is correct. This will ultimately wind up in the Forest River. There's 2 canals that bifurcate the property. The one that you see kind of running north-south is Lewis Mills Canal, and it ties into the canal that's running from left to right. That is Redgate Canal. Thomas and Hutton has done drainage studies for Chatham County on that. We do have that information. All of that will be incorporated into our internal drainage design. Would also add that we've met with Bill Nicholson at Chatham County, reviewed this with him, and he's given us some parameters, and we're going to come back with a drainage study once we're at the general development plan approval stage and go over all of that with him. We also did meet with Chatham County at their informal conceptual plan review, and went over traffic and drainage with them. And I believe some of their comments were reflected in the conditions that Mr. Lotson elaborated.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that we don't create a flooding issue downstream for the residents of Burkhalter and so forth.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Ms. Jarrett?
Karen Jarrett here. I wanted to ask whether it was possible to connect Pod 3 or Pod 4 with the property line so that ultimately we might be able to provide a route to Chatham Parkway from that side of Veterans Parkway. I do recognize that right now we're dealing with a lot of rural property, but it looks like things are changing. And if things are changing, having that connection to adjacent properties would benefit everyone, I think.
Or you mean through here, Mr. Yes. Okay. The property mostly, I think, in fact, all of the property that's north of this property is a part of Redgate Farms. That would be something that the applicant would need to discuss with the owner, because this is all private property here, which they don't currently have access through.
But if they created the potential for a connection, or at least said, you know, we can have this connection in the future if you so desire, then when Redgate Farms tries to develop further, there would be the opportunity to provide some through traffic.
Right.
I hate cul-de-sacs, I'm sorry.
I did just get the nod from the applicant that this is definitely something that they are willing to consider. I think there might have even been some preliminary conversations with the owners, and that does bring up an interesting point that I should mention about the property, just in terms of how it's laid out. As you can see on the map in front of you, there's a lot of water around there. This was all dug out as surface mines when Veterans Parkway was built. It's not necessarily as rural and agriculture as it might seem. It was all dug up, and these are the remnants from the Veterans Parkway construction. The neighbors to the immediate north are still zoned for surface mining under the county ordinance, and the other neighbor to the north that we were just discussing is a larger event venue in the city. But in terms of the access, 100%, I think it benefits everyone to explore that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Jay Melder, I think the studies as part of the condition, the flooding and the yield and the traffic are absolutely necessary. Obviously, residents are concerned about the impact on Rockingham Farms. Question to staff and then to the petitioner in the same question. Could we ensure that the traffic study also addresses access along Buckhalter and Chatham Parkway, 3 access points along Buckhalter and 1 on Chatham Parkway?
And Mr. Melder, is your comment that those, let me go back to this, and those proposed access points, I think a few things we have to do in the traffic study is determine if those that are proposed are valid and will work from a traffic engineering standpoint. The number of access points, is this the proper number? And then the issue of whether or not access will be permitted on Chatham Parkway. Would that satisfy your comment?
That's right.
Okay.
It will, just noting that the residents there are wanting other access than just off of Buckhalter. And that needs to be specifically studied and considered. We need to protect the residents along Buckhalter as well.
Thank you, sir. Any further questions, Mr. Coleman?
Yeah, Shedrick Coleman. Mr. Lotson, I know there's a county study going on Girard Avenue for improvements. Does it go all the way down to Buckhalter Road presently in that study? Is there
I believe it does,
about that? Because that would
yes.
help address that intersection deal, that maybe some improvements already being thought of rather
Right, and that was a conversation that the applicant started having with Chatham County prior to coming here today.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Ms. Bowles, do you have a question?
I do not. Thank you, Chair.
And then I'll address the audience. Is anybody in the audience here? We have one online. Nobody here in the audience in the building, do we? You okay? All right. We have Elizabeth Chivas. That's you? There's nobody online? Okay. Well, that was easier, yeah. Mr. Melder?
Could I make a motion?
You certainly may, sir.
Is it time for a motion? I'm sorry.
I think it is.
Thank you. That the commission approve the petition with conditions from staff to include a traffic study that explicitly considers access points along Chatham Parkway.
Second, Coleman.
Okay. We'll take a vote. Ms. Bowles?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Coles?
Yes.
Ms. Epstein?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Ms. Jarrett?
Yes.
Mr. Melder?
Yes.
Mr. Noah?
Yes.
Mr. Notrika?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Dr. Watkins,
Yes.
and Mr. Whitewoody,
Yes.
and Mr. Welch, yes. Motion passes. Thank you. And with that, there's no presentations. There's no other business. I wish all of you especially you, Mr. Yellen, if you're still here, happy Passover. And happy Easter to all. Y'all have a blessed and safe week. And we'll see you here next month.
Thank you,
Meeting's
Chief.
adjourned.